Kilroy goes off the shelf on RPG war games. What am I talking about? I'm talking about role playing war games. What I'm not talking about is actual role playing games. One of the earliest role playing games I played, or war games with the role playing theme, was Behind Enemy Lines by FASA. This is a great game dealing with World War II. However, one of the things that kind of set it back and made it not as replayable was, when you get shot, you die. It was relatively realistic. You didn't always die, but if you got shot, it didn't look too good for you, which kind of made it hard for your to roll up a character and take them on more than one mission at a time. Another game that a friend of mine, a high school friend of mine, ran was Recon, which is a Palladium game, and that one dealt with the Vietnam War. And what I really liked about that was, getting into character and getting into the different roles. My favorite role was the Pigman role, which was kind of a heavy weapons or machine gun, carried an M60. Love that role. Um, so what are the features of a war game RPG? So I'm not looking at pure RPGs, I'm looking at war game RPGs. So some of the features I have is that, well, it's a war game. I'm not meaning to start the great debate here on what's a war game and what's not. I'm basically saying that this is a game that has a very strong military conflict theme. That's what I'm talking about from a war game aspect here. The next feature I have is solo. Now, they don't have to be solo, but most of the time, solo is probably the best um, replacement for a dungeon master. The solo games generally have a good AI that kind of serves the same feature as a dungeon master. Also, as I'll talk about a little bit below, this format fits with the more personal nature of RPGs. Your character development and you're developing your own individual story arc. Next is, well, narrative, as I just said. A key element to any RPG is a rich narrative, which drives the game forward. That kind of pushes the storyline, gives it an arc. Also provides the player options, decisions, and choices. That's a key to a good war game RPG. And they do all this while adhering to rules of that particular world or environment. So, like with Recon, which was an action RPG, well, that was Vietnam, and Behind Enemy Lines was World War II. So once you set up the rules of that environment or that world or whatever historical period you are playing, as long as you stay within those rules and try to create some sense of realism, that's key to the narrative. Next up is dire consequences. Well, what do I mean by that? I mean, you can die. That you're developing this character or you're developing this story for a small group of soldiers or warriors, and they can die. It's not a situation like with an army that, well, you have to go get it refit, or it flips over to the next step side. You can actually lose this character and then have to start all over again. Um, Stated another way, your choices have meaningful consequences. That's a key to a war game RPG. Next up is more personal, progressive than puzzle optimal solution. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, focuses on the individual or small group rather than a squad or a large group or even an army. So some of the, really good solo war playing games like the Field Commander series from DBG, those really don't fit this. These are dealing with full armies or big groups of armies. I mean, although you are playing, as Rommel or Napoleon, or Nimitz, you are handling large groups of soldiers or large units, and so it really doesn't focus on the individual narrative. Also, what I'm talking about with the puzzle optimal solution situation, I'm looking at decisions that branch out rather than becoming a set solution to a problem or puzzle. The difference here is the really good the really good war games, again by DVG, like Castle Litter or Pavlov's House. Those are really solid solo games, but they're really at some point kind of become a little bit of a puzzle. That if you make the right choices or the optimal choices, you can kind of puzzle this out, and so your decisions don't have like an endless opportunity, or can go down, paths that you might not necessarily expect. There is somewhat of a solution at times to some of these things. So that's what I'm kind of talking about in that regard. Uh, Next up is, a life story or campaign focus. In role-playing games, you have experience points, and you level up, and you gain different skills and experience over time. And so in our war game RPG, it's not a single shot, single battle situation. It's a little bit more of a campaign focus, and you're telling a life story, and typically tracks, that through advancement or improvement through use of character or log sheets. And several of the games I'm talking about have that. So some of the games, or some of my games that best fit this, are, of course, the classic B-17 Queen of the Skies. It was one of the original ones. It's what I kind of classify as a charty uh, game, but it also is very RPG-like. You're telling a narrative of this group of crew members of a B-17, and you get attached to them, and it tells a great narrative as you're playing that game. Along with that are games that kind of derive from B-17, and that's like the Hunter series. I have the Hunters and I have Silent Victory. They're both very similar. One, you're a German U-boat commander. The Silent Victory is your U.S. U-boat commander. And again, a lot of charts, but it tells a great narrative. You keep track of what ships that you encounter, and you sink and fight, and you gain medals and awards over time. And so it really does fit with the RPG narrative. Along with that is Interceptor Ace, which which deals with kind of like the B-17, but it's on the flip side of it. You're a German fighter fighter pilot trying to take out Allied bombers during World War II. By Stealth and Sea. Now, by Stealth and Sea is again by DBG, and it's by the same designer, David Thompson, who did Castle Litter and Pavlov's Hound. But this one really, fits a lot more of the elements that I listed out. It has more of a campaign. You can play the campaign instead of just the individual scenarios, and you're going to develop over time and get additional skills. And so it does fit with that kind of that life story, that character arc as you're playing the game. And plus, some of the decisions you make, or whether how to fix your craft or to keep pressing your luck, do have dire consequences. Your characters do die in this game, and will. Um, Next up is the whole series of the Warfighter series. There's several in this. There's the modern warfare, which is the tactical special forces. Then you have the World War II, which comes in, the European theater, and then the Pacific theater, and then you also have Shadow Ops, which is fighting in the dark, which is kind of derives from the modern warfighter series, and then of course you have the private military contractor game. Now that one probably has the best development. You can actually improve your characters over time, and you're actually running a business and improving that over time. So that probably has the most developed narrative of all these, but each one of these, do provide a story of an individual, or really you usually play a small group of either a squad or a group of soldiers on a specific mission. But the best one out of all the games in my collection that I think really fit all these features that I've outlined is Legion of Honor. This one is your Napoleonic soldier, and you advance up. It has all the trappings of a RPG, where you're going to advance over time. You're going to gain new skills. There's going to be interesting stories that happen to you. You can get married, or have you know um, liaisons, and you're going to get into duels over that, and you're going to get battlefield commendations, and you're going to fight in some of the most famous battles throughout the Napoleonic history, and you just keep developing on and on and on your character and your character's story. So that one's probably one of the ones that best fits this mold. So when I'm talking about Wargame RPGs, this is what I'm talking about, and this is what I decided to go off the shelf today. So thank you for watching.